Let me see here. Microphone's turned on. Go YouTube channel here. We'll get started here. Again, apologies for the overstream. It was not working. The camera was doing a spinning thing. So hopefully you guys can hear me now. See here, audio waiting for them to catch up. Okay, guys can hear me now. All right, so we're gonna get started here. Get the folks on Spotify on board, and we'll get started here. We're gonna try to get a little bit quickly here because we do. I don't have a whole lot of time left available to get this done, unfortunately. I have a bit short on time, but we'll try to see here. We'll try to motor through this as fast as we can. So we're gonna get started here in 3, 2, 1. And welcome into the Four Verticals Podcast, episode 166 for February 26, 2026. High top, a beautiful Jacksonville, Florida Chamber of Commerce type day. Amazing out there. I went for my run earlier. Felt good. Warm weather will be like this for the foreseeable future. No cold snaps as of yet. As we always, that can happen. That can always change. But for the moment, looks like spring is here. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of things to discuss. At the Big Ten, the SEC worried about something. What's that? Oh, what's up with that? SEC and Big Ten, big boys of college football. They're never worried, but they are. And we'll dive into that as one of our big headline topics here. We have reasonable expectations. USC is on deck, and we'll finish up with college football what ifs. We have a few more on the docket here as usual. Per usual, we have some stuff to talk about there. So if you're new here, well, again, be sure to subscribe to the channel, podcast feed, YouTube channel, social media platforms, wherever you go. Helps us out big time again. We have to restart the stream here for those of you who are listening on Spotify podcast. Doesn't matter if you're on YouTube. If you're coming in here late, we are having to restart the stream because StreamYard was having issues. So we have to restart the streams. That's why there's 2 of these. We'll delete everyone later, but this is second attempt doing this, and looks like it's working out a lot better here. So let's go ahead and get started here with our first topic here. Again, subscribe to the channel, podcast feed and whatnot. There is I believe, an extra pod that was out yesterday. Yeah, an extra pod we did yesterday, so that's out there for the folks on Spotify, so go to Spotify for that. Again, as a reminder, this is independent media. No advertisers here on this show. No corporate overlords looking out over us. This is our show, college ball year round. All right, I'm going to take water real quick, and we'll get started here with our first topic. Big Ten, SEC. What do you think of them? What do you think? Big conferences, right? The power two, right? You would never think that they would be worried, right? You would never think that they would be concerned about something. Well, according to Ross Dellinger of The Athletic, they are concerned about something, and it's called the word I guess you can use here is media polling. A bit of an interesting word here, but we'll go through it here. I have a summary pulled up here on my notes. I'll read through this verbatim, and I'll sort of give you guys my reaction to it, what I think is sort of the idea here, what the big picture is, sort of. So, Big Ten versus SEC. Again, this is somewhat of a summary of Ross Dellinger's report. Big Ten versus SEC, college football media rights debate. The big story out there as of right now is that the SEC and the Big Ten, of course, the 2 richest and the 2 most powerful conferences in college football, again, the Power 2, had just dropped a joint white paper. Now, a white paper, for those of you who are not necessarily in the academic world, I am sort of. I graduated with a PR communications degree, so I have no idea what a white paper is. The best way I can explain it, for those of you who don't really care, is just a detailed policy paper. That's all it is. It's all a white paper is. I've actually written a few of them, believe it or not, during my classes in my undergrad. So yeah, it's a detailed policy document, and it was sent to members of Congress. Now, we are not necessarily a political show here, but this is what the article says. Okay, it's not me interjecting politics here. This is them doing that. They, being the SEC and the Big Ten, are aggressively pushing back against a growing idea to save college sports by changing an old law called the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. I'm not going to get into that here, or else we'll be here for 5 hours. I'm not planning on doing that, but that's all you need to know. So the idea they are fighting is being led by Cody Campbell, That's a familiar name if you know college football, right? He's the big money booster at Texas Tech. He also is a Regents chair. So what he wants, what they're fighting, is that all 130 plus schools, college football schools, to be in a to be or to pool their TV media rights deal into one giant national package. Basically, sort of a NFL for college football media rights deal, right? Amended in 1961, excuse me, they want to amend, excuse me, the 1961 law to allow this collective negotiation plus some federal oversight. The goal here to create way more total revenue. Campbell's group claims 7 billion extra, then share it more evenly. This would help fund athlete pay, other sports, Olympic sports, smaller sports to keep their programs alive without having to cut their funding. Now, if you that sounds familiar, if you've watched a lot of college sports, whether it's college basketball currently or college football, you have probably seen those commercials of Cody Campbell. That's referring to that part of this. Now, what the SEC and Big Ten's white paper says, their county argument, is, according to Ross Dellinger's article and the summary here I have up here, the pooling plan is well-intentioned but misguided and actually dangerously unworkable, according to Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey, their people. It would likely generate less money long-term, not more. There are reasons here. Adds heavily federal bureaucracy and government control, kills conference flexibility, scheduling, rivals, streaming rights, current system, and in quotations here, each conference does its own deals, is exploding in value. Already projected to hit over 11 billion annually by 2033 without any changes. Recent conference TV renewals are growing 2 to 3 times faster than expected. They call it a risk to the whole sport, more legal chaos, more slower decisions, less autonomy. So you may be asking yourself, so why does this matter? So according to this summary here I had drawn up earlier, the fight basically is, to a certain extent, rich versus everyone else. Big Ten, SEC, the haves want to keep their massive TV deals, whether it's with Fox, NBC, CBS, whomever, right? They say the current model already makes enough money to cover new costs like direct athlete revenue sharing, which is something you've heard from a lot of folks who cover the sport. Other industry insiders have pointed out that is coming down the road. Smaller conferences, mid-majors, so your G5 advocates like Cody Campbell say the gap is getting huge. Higher schools are dominating the recruiting, facilities, wins, pooling, plus sharing will create more fairness and save non-revenue sports cuts. So for you people listening here, this is kind of what it boils down to. If the Big Ten and the SEC win, and it looks like they will have influence right now, college football stays in this Power 2 system. The super rich conferences pull away while the other conferences struggle. If the pooling wins somehow, it could mean more equal money distribution, potentially better for the sport's long-term health, but with government rules and less freedom for the big dogs. And this is being directly from Ross Dellinger and other folks that have broken this news. And I will just say here, this is interesting. Very, very interesting. So you basically have Cody Campbell's plan, which is kind of, hey, let's keep everyone afloat here. Let's not let everyone get left behind. Let's not let, the American Athletic Conference, the AAC, the CUSA, whatnot. Let's not let them behind, right? Let's keep them afloat somehow. And you guys can still exist, the SEC and the Big Ten, but you need to understand that these other folks need to exist. Well, here's the thing. And this sort of ties into the whole playoff expansion. The Big Ten, the SEC do not want that. Their long-term goal for them is to form a super league. And it's interesting, and I should point out here that the Cover 3 podcast I believe on Monday, Chip Harrison, Bud Elliott, Tom Fornelli, Danny Cannell, and all of them, they talked about the Super League and what it would look like. It's ironic how they talked about it on Monday, probably knowing ahead of time this was coming. This report will be coming out from Ross Dellinger. So it's interesting that they have done all of that. They talked about it on Monday. This comes out today. So my thoughts on this as we are kind of moving ahead here. I do think that the Big Ten and the SEC clearly have their objectives. Cody Campbell wants his objective. Now, who's more right here? If I had to guess based on what I think is happening and who has more pull in college football, I do believe the Big Ten, the SEC want to do this on their own. They want to form their own super league. They want to kind of separate themselves from the rest of the college football sporting world. But unfortunately, there's this thing called the I should know the name here. I just had it in my mind. It's the whole thing about. Hold on here. I'm trying to think of what it is here. I should know what this is. I heard it just the other day. Anyway, so it's this antitrust. There we go. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. Antitrust. Yes. So their only thing standing in the way or standing in the way of the Super League or would be a somewhat obstacle is this whole antitrust thing, right? I think that could be over resolved. I think, or at least I think lawyers and smarter people with my education could probably get around that. There's definitely some gaps, if you will, that would get rid of the antitrust stuff. It would exempt that, right? So I don't know. I mean, I've had to guess here who ends up winning out here and whatnot. I would imagine the SEC. Excuse me for the burp there. That the SEC and the Big Ten's model would probably win out. That's my opinion. I think it would probably win out based on the fact that they have so much pull here, both and just as leaders in college football because there's no commissioner right now, not yet, and also that there was just, they have the playoff, right? They are bought. They have control over the playoff. There's no doubt. Again, involved in expansion and talk. Every time you hear college football playoff expansion, it's who? The SEC and the Big Ten. They want certain things in place. Obviously, Cody Campbell is fighting for the greater good of college sports. He and his people want something else. I think it's probably clear that the SEC and the Big Ten's overall outlook here for the future of the sport, I think probably will win out. But I'm not. It doesn't guarantee anything, right? It's not a guarantee that they will get their way here. But I'm just telling you that this is happening. This is definitely a real thing, and it should not be. It's not boring. I know it sounds boring, but it is important. Because, again, if the Big Ten and SEC get their way, then we are heading towards a Super League where you have all of the big boys get into their own pods, and then it basically makes the G5 be like a buffer in between them and the FCS, right? And I think we are starting to see that slowly begin to happen if indeed they get their way here on this whole media rights, fiasco, which, again, it seems like they are threatened because this whole thing from Cody Campbell and his arguments threatens their Super League, right? This is sort of one faction versus the other faction, right? And it seems like the SEC and the Big Ten, being how powerful they are, I think they will probably come out on top of this. And I think we will eventually get to, I don't know, right around 2033, that they will have their way and we'll get a Super League. I do believe that is eventually going to come. It's based on how the sport's going. Do I think this whole Cody Campbell thing isn't really relevant? Is there a real threat here? I think it is a threat, but I think it is something through lawyers and legalese. It can be probably settled, I think. So at least that's the outlook I'm looking at it, right? I mean, we don't know, obviously, down the road what this will look like, but there are certainly some paths here where I think it all leads to the SEC and the Big Ten having their own Super League, essentially, is where I'm getting at, and that's probably the direction that we're going to go. I don't really like that necessarily for where college football is at. Personally, I much prefer regionality to come back, conferences to be on their own, and sort of kind of where we were before 2024, 2023. I'd much rather like the Pac-12 be a power conference, the ACC being relevant. I'd much rather want that. But unfortunately, where the sport's going and where TV revenue is going and NIL and all these new changes and whatnot, that can't happen. It's like the analogy I've used before. You can't necessarily tear down the skyscraper fully. You can renovate it, but you can't exclude floors. You can only renovate and add more floors too. You can't take away floors. All you've really done. You can't do that. And that's college football is right now. It's the skyscraper, right? You can't take off floors. We can add more floors. You can renovate it, but you can't take off any. So unfortunately, the only way we can go now is higher, essentially. I don't know how high it's going to go, but it doesn't look like it's stopping anytime soon. It's unfortunate, but unfortunately, this is the direction the sport's going. I and others have voiced our concerns for this, but it's gone into a situation to where we're in for the ride, I guess, and who knows what ends up happening. But that is happening, and there is this dispute here, well, not dispute, but a confrontation, if you will, between the Big Ten, the SEC, the Power 2 versus Cody Campbell and his saving college sports thing. And he's not wrong either, too, right? I mean, I don't think Cody Campbell is stupid either. Both sides are right. But I just think that the SEC and the Big Ten will eventually win out. I think the whole antitrust thing, it is a real possibility that I could derail some stuff, but I don't think it's going to be a major issue that cannot be resolved through legalese and through different avenues. So that's been out there. It's just a story I figured you would want to be aware of or made aware of, and it should not be necessarily ignored. So that's that segment down here. I don't think there's anything else really to discuss other than what we know right now. Again, if you guys are joining us here, again, we talk about college football all year round. We also talk about other topics, right? Marvel, Star Wars news, Tampa Bay Buccaneers news. Of course, the NFL Combine's going on. Show's not over, by the way. We're just kind of taking a temporary pause here. We'll get on to the rest of our topics. But this show's college football all year round. That's the only topic that is guaranteed to be on here all year round. So if you love college football, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you love the other stuff I just mentioned, right? Marvel stuff, Star Wars, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, NFL, I guess, sort of, but it's only one team. We will cover some of that stuff here, but most of that stuff is for the extra pod, which we have put up on the channel yesterday. That's where you can find that stuff. That's where you can take a gander of that. Hear my thoughts on that more over there. I don't think we'll do anything tomorrow, but based on what I got some dust in my nose there. Based on some recent breaking news, we could do a topic tomorrow, potentially like a breaking news segment. So just be on the lookout for that tomorrow afternoon. Get some more water real quick. Again, apologies for the stream being a little bit later than usual. Again, we were usually almost done by now, but because StreamYard was freaking out and acting strange, we had to use a different vendor. And who knows, maybe we'll just stick the Restream. That's what we're using here. Notice the camera quality is a lot better than StreamYard, but StreamYard is usually reliable, but they were not today. Very unfortunate. Okay, here, got a reasonable expectation segment here, and then we'll get into college football what ifs, and we'll get out of here. Again, might be a bit of a shorter show, but again, time constraints here. We're kind of we're kind of losing. Well, at least I am losing the ability to have time slotted available. We're losing it essentially, and we'll be. So we're going to move quickly here. So yeah, I'm not running out of time to do the show. Reasonable expectations. We've been doing this for the past couple week or so. Then we did Oklahoma and South Carolina last show. Now we're doing USC. Of course, USC, a lot of pressure on Lincoln Riley. We touched on that a couple weeks ago on another show. But they are entering a season to where, like I've been saying before, is a culmination year. What that means is that all of these changes that Lincoln Riley has made, right? Sounds like I'm repeating what we talked about a couple weeks ago, but we kind of are. And a lot of this has to do with the defensive changes, right? Bringing in D'Anton Lynn. He leaves, and they have Gary Patterson there, but more or less, I mean, the talent's still there. I don't expect there to be a major drop-off in the defense, but you have changeover on the defense. And of course, this comes after Caleb Williams' final year there. They didn't go so well. They went, 7-6 or 8-4. And the regular season was a very disappointing year, given which had to come back. So you sort of have this transitional period, right? You have Lincoln Riley saying, we cannot do what we were doing, so I'm changing the way we're recruiting. I'm changing the way we're focusing on defense. We're overhauling the way our program's thinking. And a lot of folks, rightly, were saying, hey, this is going to take a couple years. This is not going to be an overnight success. This will not be like, 1 year changeover. It's going to be all sunshine and rainbows the next season. It's not. It was not going to be like that. It was going to be a very much so a process. And you're seeing that take place, right? You had 2024 be the first part of it, and then you just saw the second phase of it was last year, right? You had some good moments, you had some bad moments, right? Now the third phase is here, and the third phase is this season, 2024. Or excuse me, 2026. Misspoke there. 2026 is the third phase of this 3-year reset. And the comparison I made a couple weeks ago still holds serve, and I think I don't think a lot of folks who are new here probably know what I'm talking about. If you recall, or if you don't remember, Auburn under Malzahn, when he was there a couple years ago, not a couple years ago, like 6 years ago or so now, actually, around 8 years ago, actually. Or actually, no, 10 years ago now, actually. Yeah, so around 10 years ago, Malzahn, he fires his defensive coordinator he had there for the first 2 years when he got to Auburn, hires Ole Miss champ, they revamp the recruiting. Now, he ends up leaving, similar to what happened with USC and D'Anton Lynn, and then Auburn brings in Kevin Steele. But much like USC, they were able to recruit a whole bunch of players. Now, again, the defensive coordinator who helped recruit all those guys who are coming in has left, but a lot of those guys are still there. They have not transferred, at least in my opinion. So you have rich talent there. You have a good base there. You bring in Gary Patterson. So much like Auburn in 2016 and 2017, they were set up to have success in those years. And you saw that in 2016. You saw it in 2017, 2018, 2019. I think USC is sort of where Auburn was in 2017, actually, not 2016, to where you have enough talent there now to where you're expecting both on offense and defense to have massive improvements, especially on defense. And I think for this year, USC, given the defensive improvements, given how the offense is still fairly good, especially with Jaden Mayalva coming back from every year, all the defensive improvements you've had, I think this USC team, at the very least, given their schedule's difficult, right? I mean, you have Oregon, you have Washington, you have Penn State, you have Ohio State. That's a tough schedule. But here's the thing: you get some of those teams at home, at the Coliseum, right? You have Oregon, you have Washington there. You have to go to Penn State. You have Ohio State there on Halloween. You have to go to Indiana. So it's a tough schedule. But if I think what I think of USC, they should expect to win about half of those games. So like 9-3 or better is probably what you're looking at here for USC. Now, granted, this isn't necessarily a record projection. This is just a reasonable expectation. I think the reasonable expectation is that they should win most of those, or at least, well, not most, but half of those games, right? So there's about 6 games here on their schedule that it's going to be tough. I think they should win half of them. At least that's what I would believe if I were a USC fan. Based on the roster structure, the construction of the roster, defensive staff changes, you should expect, if you're a USC fan, reasonably to win half of those games. And given that most some of them are at home as well. I think it also should be reasonable. They should have a high-level defense. It's like top 15, top 10. I think that's the neighborhood you should be in. Also, probably would expect your offense to be somewhere in the ballpark of that realm as well. It's like a top 15, top 10 offense, top 15, maybe even top 20 defense should be good enough for you guys to win some of those games, I think. And I think last year, given that, it wasn't all that perfect, but, you went 9-3 in the regular season, just missed out going to the playoff. I think that plus in the regular season should be what you want from USC. If you're a USC fan, that's what you should expect. And I think that's reasonable, given that it is the year 3 of a, well, not rebuild, but a reset. Again, they had to have this reset. Given how things are going in year 2, Lincoln Riley decided to, again, reset the entire defense, bring in a whole new defensive staff. Now you're seeing the rewards, and now of good recruiting, and now you have a good talent base there, along with a offense that under Lincoln Riley has been historically pretty good, right? That's not been the issue. The issue has been the defense, and I think they have addressed that, but they did not address defense for the longest time. Again, I think a reasonable expectation here is, again, top 15 and top 10 offense, top 15 to, I guess, top 20 probably defense, and that should be good enough for you to win some of these games. Again, you get Oregon at home, Washington at home. I know you have to go to Penn State and Indiana. That's going to be tough. That's not going to be very easy. Then, of course, you get Ohio State at home. But there's opportunities there. Again, you get 3 out of your other 3 or 5 toughest games on your schedule at home. So you should feel fairly good, I think, probably to get at least half of those, or at least to get like 2 of those at home or 3. So again, we'll eventually do our record projections for USC, but I just in general here, again, like we'll do our record projections probably. Well, I know not probably. We will do them in the summer. I'm expecting USC to probably be in that 9 win to 10 win range. I think they're going to be a really good team. I think they should be a playoff team this year. I think based on everything that Lincoln Riley has laid out in this plan of theirs of rebooting the not franchise, but rebooting the program and restructuring it, you should expect results now. I think that's about the time where they should be expecting those. And I would feel the same way if I were a USC fan. By the way, too, they just announced their Week 0 opponent, San Diego State. Unfortunately, replacing Notre Dame, which that rivalry, for those of you who don't remember, is on pause now because they couldn't get to the agreement. So how about that? So, yeah, reasonable expectations for USC. Very high, I think. I think the playoffs should be in the mix. 9 to 10 wins, obviously, in the mix. Then I think a top 15 offense, and then a top 15, top 20 defense should be there as well. And some more water here. Again, apologies for the shorter stream, but again, time constraints definitely a factor here. Would have loved to do a longer stream here, but again, thanks to StreamYard, we had to make some changes. College football what ifs here, historical what ifs, right? Started this last week too. Sort of an interesting, exercise of, what if this thing happened? What if, this scenario happened differently, right? Versus how it was historically, how would it have gone? What would have been like the butterfly effect, right? And that's like a nice little exercise here we've been doing here the past couple of shows, and we'll do that now. We got 3 more here. First one up, interesting one here. What if Alabama did not blow the 24-point lead over Auburn in 2010? Well, I'll just say this. For one, Auburn doesn't win the national championship. Now, they still go to the SEC championship game, which makes this interesting. So if the rest of the history stays correct here, besides Auburn winning a national title, well, I guess we can't necessarily discount that. But if Auburn were to lose, if they would have lost to Bama, right? So they lose, but they still go to the SEC championship game. That's already been decided. They beat South Carolina. So all the other results still happen, right? So Boise State loses. And the only 2 undefeated teams left after all that's happened, except for this one change, is Oregon, who would have still beaten Oregon State, I would imagine, and Texas Christian with, I forget the guy's name, Andy Dalton. Yeah, he was a quarterback there at the time. Those are the 2 last teams they were undefeated in major college football. So, technically, the Mountain West, or not the Mountain West, I think it was like the Western Conference or whatever, the WAC, I believe. Basically, the Mountain West, or the older version of it, wasn't at that point considered a P4 conference, but they kind of were, or a P5 at the time. But anyway, so yeah, you would have had TCU and you would have had Oregon still undefeated, right? Excuse me. So the question would become here, if this scenario plays out, if Auburn would have either gone blown out or just lost the game outright to Bama, even if they made it a close game again, what would have happened for the national championship game? Would you have had Oregon still be there, but who would be the other team? Now, if we go, I guess I probably should have this ahead of time, to the 2010. I guess we can do some research on the fly here real quick. Go to the final poll of the BCS. You can find that here. I'm pretty sure it would have played out probably like this. So, yeah, the final poll here had, let's see here. See, yeah, it would have been Oregon, TCU, Stanford, Wisconsin, and Ohio State as the one-loss teams along with Auburn, right? I'd imagine if Auburn would have lost, they probably would have been behind those teams. So then the question becomes, who's the second team? Is it TCU? I mean, according to BCS, yeah, they would have been in the national championship. If that's the case, they would have been in there 12 years earlier, before they made it in 2022 versus Georgia, which is insane to think about. Now, if the BCS computers would have been like, probably don't want a G5 team, basically a G5 team in a national championship, I think you would have, I guess, seen either Wisconsin or Stanford in the national championship game. So it could have been Pac-10 versus Pac-10, or Pac-10 versus Big 10 being Wisconsin. So, yeah, very fascinating scenarios there for who would have faced Oregon there for the national championship, besides Auburn. Given that either Auburn gets destroyed or they just lose the game outright in Iron Bowl versus Bama. So, yeah, I think that's would have been your national championship. Oregon versus, I guess, TCU in that case. And in that situation, I guess Oregon would have had a national championship already by now. So, yeah, that's a very interesting what-if scenario there. A lot of different ways that can go. And very interesting, though. I mean, again, if the BCSN won TCU in the national championship game, then I guess you would have had Pac-10 versus Pac-10. Then you would have had, if it wasn't that, then I guess Big 10. A Big 10 team would have been there. I guess Wisconsin. But very unlikely Auburn would have been in there given their safer schedule, non-con, and not to mention with the fact that they lost a game. But they did win that conference champion, so I don't know. Maybe they would have been in it anyway. I don't know. I guess we'll never know because it didn't happen. Next one here. What if Arkansas beat LSU in 2011? Again, another interesting one here. So this would have meant that, at least I think, that Alabama would have been in the SEC championship game instead of LSU, and it would have been, yeah, it would have been LSU versus, Bama versus Georgia in the SEC championship game and not LSU. LSU would have stayed home because of the whole tiebreaker thing. LSU, despite beating Bama, yeah, actually, I'm trying to think here. So how that actually works. So Bama beats Arkansas. LSU loses to Arkansas, but then I guess I don't know. I guess it would have been the yeah. I guess actually yeah, they would have deferred to the BCS poll. So I had the BCS pulled up here. So LSU loses, Bama wins out, Arkansas wins out. Obviously, I guess it would have been Alabama going to the SEC championship game, Arkansas being number 2. So that means that if both those teams, let's say Bama beats Georgia, and then of course Arkansas is there number 2, it would have been an SEC, an all SEC national championship game, Arkansas versus Alabama. Very weird, and I guess Alabama would have won that game. I don't know for sure. Yeah, probably they would have. Yeah, well, who am I kidding? But yeah, that'd been interesting. Yeah, I mean, Bama versus Georgia, Mark Wright versus Nick Saban. Again, probably Bama beats Georgia. They go to face Arkansas in the national championship game. Then I guess Bama wins it. Even though, again, LSU beat Bama, because LSU losing, they would have gone down, I guess, below Bama and Arkansas. But then again, the other conversation comes into, okay, well, do you move Bama ahead of LSU because LSU beat them? But a very odd, concerning situation, very not concerning, but very confusing situation. So thank goodness that we didn't get to that point. That it was more or less simple that Bama and LSU were just still 1 versus 2 after Oklahoma State lost Iowa State. So I guess you can thank Iowa State for making things simple and thank LSU for beating Arkansas, because that would have been really, really weird if all those teams ended up having one loss. I don't necessarily remember the tiebreakers back then. I know during the LSU-Arkansas game, they would have CBS showed the graphic, but I don't have it pulled up here, so I didn't think about it ahead of time. But just without having any tiebreakers in front of me, I guess it would have been, yeah, Arkansas versus Alabama, and Alabama would have went to the SEC championship game because Bama had the tiebreaker over Arkansas. So I guess that's how it would have ended up, I guess. So I can't necessarily say for sure. Then the last one here. What if Indiana lost to Penn State? Interesting one here. So again, this is more recent. So of course, Penn State challenged Indiana. The only team really do that versus instead of Miami, only other team that challenged them. Again, reminder, that was a close game. What if Penn State would have won? Well, it would have given Penn State, I guess, some hope for the future. They would have ended the season aiming for, still probably would have had their crazy, weird coaching search that ended up ending on the guy they should have hired, Matt Campbell. But for Indiana, they have one loss. Now, did they go to the Big Ten championship game? That's a good question. Let me see here. I think they probably would have. If I had to guess, yeah, they probably would have still gone. Now, Oregon would have been there. Oregon would have been there as a one-loss team. I guess that would have been the only issue here. But Indiana, though, corrects that because they beat Oregon already. So it doesn't matter. The Oregon's already out. I think at that point, Indiana had it sawed off in terms of, knocking out Oregon from the competition for the conference championship. Now, of course, the other issue would have been, I think, Michigan at the time, because I think Michigan only had one loss at that point before they lost to Ohio State. So that would have been the other obstacle there for, I guess, Indiana. They would have gone knocked out at Penn State. But they still would have been in the playoffs. So now, with that loss, does that change anything? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe that changes the mentality. But as people do say, that sometimes losses make you stronger. And like I said after that game, that Penn State win ended up probably making Indiana stronger. It benefited them knowing that, hey, we survived here. We know our lessons here. Even in a loss, we learned some tough lessons here, and we realized that we were not this impenetrable team that we thought that we thought we were. I think that was a valuable lesson for Indiana. Even if they won the game, it was a very valuable lesson. If they lost, I think it still would have impacted them winning the national championship. I don't know. Probably not. I think if they probably would have. This is so hard here. Again, I don't know. That's the only way. That's the easy way I can say this. I don't know. I don't know if it would have prevented them from winning the national championship. Obviously, they would have had one loss, and I guess the margin of an error goes up. But I don't know. I mean, I guess they probably still would have won it, but I guess it maybe deflates, I guess, the enjoyment of being undefeated. I don't know. I mean, again, Only person that would have known that is, I guess, Kirk Cinetti. To be honest with you, I have no idea. So that's something we'll never know if they would have had one loss. And I guess technically they, it doesn't hurt anything. But I would just say this, though, if this was the 14 playoff, would have not been the probably would have not been in the cultural playoff. Probably, though, if history still aligns with the regular season and the conference champ, they probably would still been in. So, excuse me, I don't know. Interesting. Think about there. Would they actually have still won the national championship? I mean, probably, but we'll never know because they still went undefeated. But for Penn State, though, I don't want to think would have changed anything with them either because they would still. I mean, the record looks a lot better, but the coaching search would have still been really stupid and very, dumb in terms of what would have happened there. So that's it for the show. Again, we have a shorter show because of the time constraints here. We had to get this done a little bit earlier. So we will have a maybe breaking news segment tomorrow. There's some Marvel news that's been trickling out that I probably will want to talk about tomorrow. So there's that, but keep an eye on the channel for that. So until next Tuesday, we'll have another proper show. Until then, take care, and we'll see you guys on the next stream.